Hey, welcome back to another episode of The Lonely Liberal Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Zankin, and I'm so happy to have you on this lovely Wednesday. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about maybe the biggest myth in American politics, and that is that there's rampant voter fraud in the country. I mean, you hear it all the time, right? There's all these illegal votes, all these mail-in frauds, elections are being stolen, what's going on? But what does the actual data say? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And this administration, the Trump administration, is showing you what happens when myth actually becomes politics, right? You have the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, going to Georgia, raiding the voting booths. You have the Save America Act kind of in Congress, and we'll talk about that. So all of this stuff is real and actively happening and very timely with the midterms coming up. So we're going to talk about where this myth comes from, what the evidence actually says, and ultimately who gets hurt if any of this becomes real life, actually. So I'm really glad to have you, but we got a lot to talk about. So without further ado, let's get to it. All right, so I'm about to load you guys up with a bunch of data about this stuff. And you may go, Nick, oh my God, a bunch of numbers. What does this mean to me? Yeah, you're right. They're boring. But I think it really is important to really understand the scale of how not of an issue this really is. And it's been studied so much because people keep perpetuating this myth. So I'm going to rattle off a bunch of stats, and I'll let you know that the overarching lines are: you are so much more likely to be struck by lightning than to encounter someone impersonating a voter at the polls, just for your reference. The Brennan Center, which is one of these think tanks, showed that voter fraud rates is between 0.0003% and 0.0025%, okay? There was another study in 2012 where they called the rate infinitesimal. Only 10 cases, and when they say cases, that's votes cast, over the last 12 years in 2012, so from 2000 to 2012, there's been around 70 in the last 40 years. I mean, all the AP did one, maybe it said 100, all of these different studies. But the one I want to focus the most on is the data shown by the Heritage Foundation. So for those who don't know, the Heritage Foundation is, the writer of Project 2025, got a bunch of headlines, but it's a conservative think tank that has basically been in the Republican Party's kind of brain trust since Reagan. And so they have this map called the election fraud map. And it's supposed to be this big gotcha, like, see, oh my God, look at how many elections are riddled with fraud. And I want to show you these numbers, because these are the ones that they're trying to use to make a point, right? So if these are going to be very aggressive, because you have to read the room, right? Who's putting it forward, right? In Arizona, there were 42 million ballots cast over the last 25 years. They found 36 cases of fraud. That's 0.0000843. Pennsylvania, 30 years. There's 100 million plus votes, 39 cases of fraud. In Georgia, they found 0 cases of fraud in millions of votes cast. Texas, over 100 million votes, 0.000096. In the entire database alone, there's only 99 cases of non-citizens voting since 1982. That's across billions of ballots, okay? This is on top of other kind of conservative libertarian think tanks like the Cato Institute saying there are no detectable amounts of non-citizen voting. They did this in Utah. They did this here. And it's just so funny because Heritage built this database, right, to just prove a point that, oh my God, voter fraud is rampant. And literally, it's the best piece of evidence to suggest that it isn't actually rampant. You guys can look it up. I encourage you to do it. Heritage.com, right? And then what's so interesting is when you actually, look at the 99 cases that have been proven to happen, almost all of them were people voting who thought they were eligible. Who is that? Former felons who were given voter registration forms by mistake by state officials, or people who voted in 2 states not knowing it was illegal. The vast majority of that 99 were that. Literally. Like, it's there's almost nothing more to say other than this isn't an issue. And you can look literally at the conservative think tank that is trying to make this an issue data to show that it isn't. Like, it's actually embarrassing, but it's true. And it is worth you knowing, because I do think that, one, we get a lot of conservative listeners. Hey, how's it going? But more so, I do think people think this is more of an issue than it is, even if they don't think it really mattered. I'm sure there's some, but it doesn't actually swing elections. Like, no, it's really not something. Like I said, you are really more likely to get struck by lightning than for this to even happen. Like, this really is the biggest myth that has been normalized over the last few years. And why has it been normalized, you may ask? Because simply it can't be the Heritage Foundation. I mean, let's be real. Many of us listening and, didn't really care about the Heritage Foundation until Project 2025. And even still, people probably have heard of Project 2025, but they may not tie it to the Heritage Foundation. And by the way, I did an episode on them a few months back. Highly recommend checking it out. They are pretty evil. But obviously, this is an issue because of Mr. Donald J. Trump and his constant whining about the 2020 election and his just rampant claims that it was stolen when there is literally no chance it was, and he knows it, right? They have filed, I don't think people realize, Trump has filed 62 lawsuits across 9 states and D.C. challenging the results of the 2020 elections. They lost all of them. Okay, 30 of those cases were dismissed after a full hearing because the judges said they lacked any merit at all. These judges, by the way, because I can hear conservatives already going, well, liberal Department of Justice Biden, they were ones appointed by Trump and other Republican presidents. Okay, this isn't some liberal scam. This is just true. They were dismissed as frivolous, quote unquote, and without merit. Trump's own attorney general, not Pam Bondi, unfortunately, Attorney General William Burr, found no evidence of vote fraud sufficient to change the outcome because, like I said, when we're talking fraud, we're talking 2, 3. And again, the Department of Homeland Security in 2020 said the 2020 election was the most secure election in American history, and it was. So this is it. I mean, most conservatives, right, have even admitted. Now, not the ones in Congress. I think that's an important. Conservative think tanks and lawyers. There was this famous paper in 2022 called The Election Was Lost, Not Stolen. It's this 72-page report. People who voted for Trump and said, look, we've done all the research. There's literally no evidence. You can read these papers. They just say this. And particularly, and this is really important because of what I'm about to talk about, the election in Georgia specifically has been the most scrutinized, the most litigated, most reviewed, most recounted election in American history. Those are not my words. That's the words from the Center of Election Innovation and Research, a nonpartisan think tank that reviews all this data. Georgia has been so litigated. It's not even funny. And this isn't even talking about, frankly, the recordings we've all heard, and if you haven't heard it, I highly recommend you listening, of Trump calling the Georgia governor and saying, find me the 11,000 votes, blah, 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 which is, frankly, so much evidence to suggest that he was wanting to rig it in his favor, if anything. But Georgia has been so reviewed so much. It's so boring, right? But the reason why we're talking about this is they won't shut up about it. And now that they're back in the building, they can now act like this is real. And really, nothing shows up more than what Tulsi Gabbard has been doing in Georgia, right? The FBI, just a few weeks ago, and we talked about this on the Sunday show, but for those who didn't listen, executed a search warrant in Fulton County, Georgia, in the election office, seizing 700 boxes of ballots and records from the 2020 election. In That truck was the National Intelligence Director, Tulsi Gabbard, who, by the way, is nothing to do with this at all. The National Intelligence Director, the Director of National Intelligence, rather, is supposed to be a nonpartisan kind of data collector. Nothing to do with these whims of the president. It's supposed to just be the data source. So already ridiculous. Literally, the DNI's job is to just coordinate foreign intelligence and just protect from foreign adversaries. It's just like supposed to be like a CIA type role. Nothing to do with this. And it's just so stupid. I mean, let's be real. Were there Russian secrets, North Korean secrets in Fulton County? It seems pretty weird, right? And when you actually look even further at it, because this obviously got the headlines, the Wall Street Journal did a deep dive on this, and apparently that's all she's been doing. That's all Tulsi's been doing, has been spending months after month investigating Trump's 2020 claims, briefing Trump, briefing Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, coordinating with all these random lawyers that were helping Trump at the time, and nothing also could be found. She keeps saying, oh, Trump sent me. Trump says, what are you talking about? I didn't know she was even there. Then White House staff said it was the FBI. But then the FBI guy, Kash Patel, says, I don't even know why she's there either. No one can keep the story straight because it's obviously smoke and mirrors. It's totally nonsense. And once again, out of the words of the Fulton County Board, they said, any honest review of these files will show whatever every previous review has shown. Fulton County elections are fair and lawful, and the outcome of the 2020 election will not change. Clearly. And why this is even more creepy is that in 2020, Trump told the New York Times he wished he had seized the ballots in 2020 so he could count them himself. Give me a break. It's very concerning and very creepy. And this is something that we need to learn from going forward, that this cannot be a thing that happens, period. And then briefly, because I don't want to bog you down with legislation stuff, it is worth noting that the Save America Act, which, again, the title of the act alone is infuriating, which was just passing the House, last week, will not get the Senate vote. It got blocked already. But Trump is obviously pressuring Republicans to pass this. Now, what is this? This is basically a massive voter ID / mail-in ballot thing. And in fact, Trump said on Truth Social, which we shouldn't have to think of as real, but this is the world we live in, there will be voter ID for the midterm elections, whether approved by Congress or not. That's a dictator, folks. But anyways, what does this bill do? Like I said, it requires documentary proof of U.S. citizenship, either a passport or a birth certificate, to register to vote. So just so you understand that, military ID, driver license, tribal ID, these aren't sufficient. Also, the proof must be presented in person, okay? Now, you may not like mail-in voting, right? But the truth is that many people either living abroad or just can't go to the polls during work hours. Let's not forget, people have to vote during work, and a lot of people can't take work off, is a huge thing. That's 11 million people, folks, all right? If they need this, not only is it so quick, right? It's in, the midterms in 6 months, whatever, 7, 8 months. Think about the real ID, right? Like, how long did they take to roll that out, and people still don't have it? So many people aren't going to be able to do this. We're talking about people without passports. Who is that? Low-income people who don't travel, people who just haven't left the country. A third of Americans don't have a passport. Also, and this one is huge, married women. Married women who have changed their name probably haven't amended their birth certificate and probably haven't updated their passport. Passport updates take months and months. They're closing the passport office, the free libraries that do it. So this is already a huge problem. And then also, anyone from the LGBTQ community who's changed their name as well. So basically, any type of name change, you would have a very difficult time voting, right? This is a disaster. And something that, especially in the time frame. I mean, we're talking, again, like I said, 10 months, 8, 9 months. It's ridiculous. And this is all to address a problem that doesn't exist, okay? Keep that in mind, right? If they do this, they are making a law to solve a problem that has happened 99 times in the last 50 years. This is not an issue. This is a way to limit the amount of people who can vote, specifically low-income people, poor people, women who are married, in the gay community, the LGBTQ community. I wonder why MAGA doesn't want them to vote. And that's our show, folks. Thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, please give it a review wherever you're listening, particularly Apple Podcasts. Most of the people who listen to the show listen on Apple Podcasts, and yet that's our lowest review platform. So either you guys keep listening scowling, or you're just being lazy, which I get. I don't do this often, but now that I'm the podcast one, I'm like, hey, help a brother out, my God. But no, that would be really great. Tell people all that stuff. We will be back on Sunday. Actually, we won't be back on Sunday. Our usual co-host, Rick, my co-host, will be moving. He's on the move. He's changing apartments and literally won't have Wi-Fi. And we might try to do another, like a supplement show. Maybe I'll do a little solo thing, but probably not. You can blame Rick for getting a nicer apartment like he was talking about on Sunday. So until then, I'll let you know. I'll let people know on the Instagram or whatnot what actually ends up happening. But just to let you guys know, take it easy until then. We'll talk soon. Bye.